What's going on, guys? So today I'm going to be making probably a bit of a controversial video. Um, I've recorded this a couple times and I just don't think I've gotten it right. So hopefully this time it goes correctly. But basically, from everything that I have seen in the past 2 days, RuneScape 3 is down bad. And it's not just down bad, it's down so bad that it is incredibly concerning, especially when you take into account some of the uh, things that have happened in the past 2 years of the game. So, if you guys don't know, personally, I don't think there's been a single good update besides maybe Necromancy and the combat changes in about 2 years. And the way that I see it, the combat changes aren't real content, and Necromancy was very simple content. It's simply just a new combat style to engage with old content. It's not really a whole lot of new content in and of itself, besides the city of here, which is, fairly small. It looks really nice, but it's fairly small, all things considered, and, a few very simple bosses like Hermit. It's like a Slayer creature, and Raziel is like a God Wars Dungeon 2 boss. I just don't really think there's been a whole lot of good content released in the past 2 years, really. I think a lot of the development time was unfortunately wasted on this place here, on the Fort 4 and 3. The only good thing I see really coming out of this place is the potential expansion for construction in the future and the wood cutting changes. Everything else seems pretty, like mediocre or useless at best. And, this this is a bit of a controversial video, I think. I don't really know how many people will agree with this, but basically the reason I'm making this video is because of this recent news post right here. So this recent news post here is talking about what we can expect to see in May and June. As you can see, everybody probably saw the roadmap, if you call it that, which basically announced this quest and then that there was nothing else being worked on. And that was our roadmap for the future of the game, which, awful, I don't know. But they made this news post yesterday about what they are working on for May and June. And what they're working on is going to be the 4th Rex Matriarch and the Demonheim dig site. And some credit where credit is due. It is nice to see that the developers, have kind of listened to the complaints of the community and are making some changes. But these changes, in my opinion, are so small that it's really hard to take these super positively. And we'll get into that here in a second, but yeah, I don't know. I've had some suspicions about RuneScape 3 ever since Zamorak was released, and those suspicions were that the development team was getting downsized and downsized and downsized and downsized. And, it's been very apparent that that has been the case ever since Zamorak was released. Again, if we look at Fort 4 and 3, it's essentially a year and a half spent making Fort 4 and 3, and it's effectively one update that was split up like 7 times. And so yeah, that was kind of my suspicion. And I think this post all but confirms that suspicion, or it basically confirms that suspicion. And the reason I say that is because basically the conclusion of this video, or this news post, is that all of the development team that wasn't working on the Requiem for the Dragon quest was instead working on a summer event and the Easter event that just came out, and then obviously the Christmas event before that. Basically, this post is saying that all of the developers were working on these temporary events, which, the temporary events, I guess, are nice, but if the game is falling apart around the temporary events, it really drags those temporary events down with it. And this sentence right here, I think, is pretty damning. It says the summer event was taking as many resources to deliver as persistent content releases. And this, to me, tells me that the only things that were being worked on were these temporary events as well as this quest. And we'll get into the quest after this, but these temporary events, like, they're nice. Like, I think the Easter event was good. I think it was well done. I think it looked nice. The content for being, you know, a temporary thing was cool. The little quest was kind of fun or whatever. And the egg hunts were nice, but it was very hard to like that content because there's nothing else in the game that is new. Like, everything else in the game that's new is mostly pointless, or it's necromancy, which, again, like I said, it's just a new way to engage with old content, but there's not really any new content to engage with that is actually good. You know, there's not really any new Slayer content. There's nothing new for Clue Scrolls. There's almost no new quests. I mean, the necromancy quests are effectively 2 quests split up into, was like 6 or something like that for marketing purposes, but you know, they don't really have anything to do with the rest of the game. There's, you know, just so few updates to the game, and most of them are pretty low quality, like Vorkath, which was very poorly made. It was very buggy, it was very rushed, and it took 2 rounds of changes to the drops to make it, you know, any sort of decent, right? Like, that is pretty bad in my opinion. And yeah, I think this really confirms my suspicions that there's like 5 people working on RuneScape 3. And if we compare, you know, RuneScape 3, which is, or the quest releases for RuneScape 3, which is this quest, and then these 2 little pieces of content, if we compare that to Old School just got a whole combat rebalance for NPCs as well as the weapons. They also just got some these new undead pirate things, which I think are like a little wilderness update, and the entirety of Varlamore, which has the Colosseum, and I believe it was 3 other bosses with that. Varlamore released, if we go here to March, you can see Varlamore Part 1 releases March 22nd, and then we go to April, and you can see Varlamore Part 2 releases April 9th. So 2 weeks apart, you get the completion of a giant update, whereas RS3, if we go here to 4 and 3, how many updates did this take? 6, 7, like over a year and a half? And this is smaller than Varlamore by a long shot. So it's not that Jagex can't make good updates for RS3, they just don't. You know, they cut the development team completely into basically 0 people. And that to me is incredibly concerning. The Rex Matriarch here, this Rex Matriarch, I mean, how long do you think this really takes the developers to make? 2 weeks? Like 3 developers takes like 2 weeks to make this at most? I mean, it was already planned for this to be in the game. It, you know, like the teleporter, this thing was already here. Like, I don't know, it shouldn't take that long to make this. You can see here, the Demonheim archaeology site is basically just a Moksha device, which is already created. I mean, this will probably take a development team of 5, you know, maybe a month to create. But even still, like, there are so few developers in the, like, working on RS3 that there's like almost no content coming out. And it's really showing. Unfortunately for, you know, a lot of people probably don't want to see this, but unfortunately for us, there's a massive drop off in the amount of people playing the game. We are currently at an average player count of 17,500 people, which is very close to the all-time low, which you would see here, which is 17,000 people. So we're very close to the all-time low for the average. And then the peak player counts we're seeing are at an all-time low. We're currently at 23,500 people, and the all-time low here was again 23,500 people. So we're basically at the all-time low player counts. So, you know, it's not just me, I don't think, that feels this way. I think it's probably everybody, unfortunately. And that's kind of the reason why I'm making this video, because we need to see some changes to RS3, the way that the content is developed, the quality and the quantity of the content, because at this rate, you know, even with a nice little Rex Matriarch and Demonheim dig site, like, these aren't going to save the game, right? These are 2 very small updates at the end of the day. and these aren't going to save the game. You know, what's going to save the game is high quality, large scale updates. You know, think like Varlamore, think like Zaya, think like an entire Eastern lands being added in. Like there needs to be large updates that have a reason to play them, or, you know, outside of just getting the comp rec. A good example of this for a small update would be something like the Revenants, where, you know, the Revenants, they're a relatively small update if you take them as just the Revenants, but there's a huge amount of time that you can spend there getting the drops or getting the Revenant pet. And although the update itself is relatively small, there's a lot of content that can come out of it, kind of. I mean, you know, it's a small update, but you can get a lot of, you know, playtime and you can do a lot of stuff there. And same thing with the Eastern lands. You can, for example, you can get the Salty title from that. And, you know, that takes a very long time to get. You can spend a lot of time skilling on the Isles. You can do a lot of stuff at the Eastern lands because it's a well-made, well-put-together, large update that isn't just some little tiny thing that's added in just to say, like, hey, look, we're still updating the game. You know what I mean? Like, there's a huge difference in updates like the Eastern lands here. If we go here to Waco, there's a huge difference in this type of update and an update like this, unfortunately for us. And again, the reason I'm making this video is because I see the game as being down incredibly bad. Like, the game is in a very bad state. And I think if it continues down this path, the player numbers will continue to drop and drop and drop until eventually, you know, what happens if the player numbers drop too much? The game just dies. And obviously I don't want that to happen. I really like this game. It's one of the few games that I do like currently. I mean, most games have been ruined for me. I like to play shooter games on mouse and keyboard. Basically can't do that anymore because aim assist is 40 to 60% of an aimbot. And although I could go pro on controller at a lot of these games, I find it so boring that I am not going to do that. So those games have been ruined. Single player games are fun, but, you know, you usually only get at max like 50 to 100 hours out of one of those games. And yeah, I don't know. It's just a lot of the games aren't super great right now, and this one is turning into that as well. And over the past 2 years, it really has gone down that pathway of being just a not good game. And that's not even talking about microtransactions and all of that stuff. It's purely talking about the content. And yeah, I definitely think something needs to change. The last thing here I'm going to talk about is going to be this quest here. So this Requiem for the Dragon quest, they just did a whole live stream about this quest. And basically in that live stream, they said that they are no longer really going to be spending time working on Grandmaster scale quests, which if you guys play RS for the quest lines, I'm assuming you're playing for the quests, you know, like Ritual of the Majorat, and not for quests like cleaning owl shit off the floor in the Housing of Parliament quest. Like, nobody wants to do this. This is a garbage tier quest. But things like Ritual of the Majorat and Wall Gothic Sleeps are really, you know, the big selling points when it comes to quests. It's not really the number, it's the quality of the large-scale Grandmaster quests, right? Like Sliske's Endgame. Amazing quest, really good, like, well-done quest. And we haven't had a quest like that in a long, long time. And now they're saying that they're not going to be devoting a whole lot of resources to quests like that, even though they haven't been for a long time either. So that's very concerning as well. And, you know, I guess the conclusion of this video, the whole reason I'm making this is, if you guys are unhappy with the state of the game, stop playing it. I know I have mostly stopped playing RuneScape 3. This account here mostly just logs into old school. Maybe I do some Zamorax here and there, but mostly just play old school on here. I don't really play RS3 too much outside of making content for you guys, because I still like making content and stuff, but there's nothing left for me to do in the game because the developers don't make content for me anymore. You know, you can see I'm a pretty hardcore player, high-level player. The developers haven't really made content for me in like 2 years. And I mean, they might make a little bit of content for some of you guys who, you know, aren't hardcore players like this, I guess. but I've pretty much noticed that everybody who plays this game still is a very hardcore player, whether or not they're high level or not. And unfortunately, the only way I see the game ever getting better is if player numbers continue to drop and the developers are forced to do something different. I don't really see it getting better any other way than that. And like I said, I've pretty much stopped playing the game. I play way less than I used to. I've been playing old school more. And I've also canceled membership on multiple of my accounts. I just have this account, like I said, for old school mainly, and my other account for content for you guys. I mean, that's the only reason I have membership on that account, is to make content with. But my Iron Man stopped paying membership for that, obviously. And then my other alt, I stopped paying membership on that as well, because the game simply isn't good enough to pay membership for, really. So yeah, hopefully some of you guys just like this video. If you don't like the video, if you don't agree with it, leave a comment as to why, I guess. But you know, this is mainly because, you know, the state of the game that I see it in currently, I can't sit here and let the investors and bad management just destroy the game. I can't sit idly while they do that. And I'm gonna put my little piece here to fix the game, hopefully. And hopefully it sways some of you guys to maybe stop playing the game until things get better. Because honestly, like I said, I don't see the game getting better without player numbers continuing to drop. Unfortunately for the developers at this point, the way that I see the community acting is the disappointment that players like me have has turned mostly into apathy. Like players like me, they don't care anymore. They don't, like, the game could die tomorrow and they wouldn't care. And that's obviously a very bad state for the player base to be in. And the amount of work it's going to take Jagex to fix that is pretty high, but it's got to start somewhere. And hopefully this video maybe will, you know, I don't know. But hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Hopefully it wasn't too ranty. Hopefully it wasn't too negative or anything like that. But personally, I just see the game that I like playing getting destroyed, and I want to save it. And this is how I can maybe, hopefully, do that. So yeah, if you guys made it this far in the video, definitely drop a like on it. Thanks for watching for so long, and more content coming in the future, guys. But yeah, I will see you in the next one.